I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. I'm tired.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
Well, hello. We are late today with the John Dennis Report, but thanks for joining us on May 17th, Monday, in the year 2021. Grateful to have you here. Look forward to chatting. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of funky stuff happening. You know, in my position as the chairman of the San Francisco Republican Party, I get emails all the time from people who are just, had it up to here with what's happening in San Francisco. I wear a lot of hats, for those of you who don't know. So I'm the chairman of the San Francisco Republican Party. I'm also a candidate for Congress running against Nancy Pelosi. I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi, one of the great opening campaign lines in American electoral history. And I've been lucky enough to say it a few times. Anyway, so I get contact for that. I get contact for people contact me for other reasons. But in my position as chairman, I get lots of interesting information from people and stories about what life is like in San Francisco. Today, I spoke to a guy in the Tenderloin, which, if you don't know, San Francisco is, one of the rougher parts of town. And it's weird because the Tenderloin is actually, fairly close to downtown, down to the business district. And by all measures, it should be a nice area, but it is where, we have our biggest homeless encampments, lots of drug addiction, tons of, stuff happening there. And in any event, so a guy just contacted me. He calls himself the mayor of the Tenderloin, and he's organizing some odd events to draw attention to the fact. And he's, by the way, this is a guy from, say, a third world country, a country that's poor, and he is appalled by what he's seeing in the Tenderloin. Can you imagine that? San Francisco, the crown jewel, what should be the crown jewel of the United States of America, is offending a guy who's from a third world country because of its depravity and debasement of the people who live there and what we're allowing to happen on the street. So there's that. But I have another email today that's absolutely got my attention, and you have to stay on here for a second. We're still organizing it because it came in kind of late, but you have to see this whole thread, this email. It is unbelievable, and it really gives you a sense of what's going on in San Francisco. So Mario's getting it queued up. I'm going to tell him which ones to put up. Mario, you got to be really careful about which ones we put up. I see you've got that organized pretty well there. We've got to protect the identity of the person who sent this. But this is all entirely true. And I'm going to get to it in a second while we're getting it organized. In the meantime, let me just talk a little bit about some news. And Mario, if you can put up in the, while I'm talking about this, if you can put that Elise Stefanik article up while you're doing your thing. Yep. Yeah, thanks. So many of you know that Elise Stefanik, I don't know how to, I think it's Stefanik, was recently elected the House caucus leader for the GOP, and a position, frankly, I got to be honest with you, I didn't even know it existed. I guess it's second in command or something like that to the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy. And I've known for a while that Stefanik has had a good relationship with Kevin McCarthy. I knew that she was a Trump supporter. But I also know some other things because I have some inside information. I'm friends with a number of people in Washington, some people in Congress, some people in the Senate, some of you know. And I will say this, be very wary, be very careful about Elise Stefanik. I'm not, you're supposed to protect each other in terms of Republicans on the one hand. On the other hand, We missed as Republicans an enormous opportunity when Donald Trump was first elected, because we controlled all three houses of the Congress. And if you are a Republican, or if you're not, if you were a Republican, you were surprised. And if you were not a Republican and not a supporter of Donald Trump's, you're probably surprised too that a lot of the Trump agenda got stalled during that time. I know that it caused a falling out between Donald Trump and Ann Coulter, because Ann Coulter wanted the wall built on day one, and is is very concerned about the loss of America because of unbridled and unfettered illegal immigration. And so there were a lot of people wondering, why is this taking so long? Because Trump's a man of action. He wanted to get things done, whether you agree with him or not. He's constantly on the move. He's one of these guys who doesn't sleep a lot. I mean, he's constantly on the motion and in motion. And the bottleneck was Paul Ryan got exposed, and was basically the problem. Okay, fast forward to today. Elise Stefanik has put herself in a position to be in, high leadership, and in the leadership, I guess it makes her the number 3 spot in the House for the Republicans. And here's the thing to keep in mind: Kevin McCarthy should have been the Speaker of the House in 2014 when the Republicans retook the House. And he had an unfortunate interview, and it didn't work out, and that's why we got Paul Ryan. And so let's assume that the Republicans do take back the House next year, which is, the chances look good at this moment. We're still some time away. But, let's say for some reason he has another bad interview or something happens and he doesn't become the Speaker of the House. We have the prospect of maybe Elise Stefanik becoming the Speaker. Steve Scalise is up in front of her, but you never know. Maybe the Republicans want to make a Republican woman, the Speaker of the House, and, disrupt the the narrative. If she does become the Speaker, what are we going to get? She has her voting record is not terribly conservative. I think she has a 48% rating by conservative organizations based on her voting. So that's a problem. And there's something a bit shaky about her. There are, I got to be careful here what I say, but I do know that she worked actively against sitting Republicans in the House. Let's just say that. Her colleagues, people with whom she disagreed, people of principle. And I'm not going to get into anything more than that, but I would just say watch very carefully with her. If you're expecting a full Republican agenda to come from her, I wouldn't. I would choose someone else to be the Speaker of the House or in other leadership positions other than her, because she's got a different agenda. And, I get it. We need guys who and women who are power-driven. Sorry to say it. I hate it myself. But the truth is those folks out there are kind of necessary. They're a necessary part of the party. But you can't let them get all the power. And you have to have people who somehow balance between power and principle, and what the principles of the party are. And Elise Stefanik is not that person. So let's leave it at that. I've made the warning. I put the warning out there that to be very careful about her. Okay, let's move on. Are you ready, Mario?
I think so.
Okay. So I got an email from a guy about a situation out on a guy in San Francisco who's got kids and a family, and he's not in one of the rougher parts of town. He's out actually on the west side of town. And the supervisor out there is a Marxist nutcase. And he is, and on that side of town, you don't really see the kinds of troubles you see with homelessness and, mental illness and drug addiction and that sort of thing on the streets that you would see in other parts of town. But this guy sent an email to his supervisor, this Mar character, about homeless problems that they're seeing, syringes in a really nice little park out there, one that I'm actually familiar with. This guy's got kids. He's taking his kids into this nice park that they've never had this kind of trouble with before, and finding syringes on the west side of San Francisco. I mean, on that side of town, by the way, the farther west you go, the less hospitable the weather gets. It can be typically fogged in, cold, windy out on that side of town. And homeless people, if they're out there venturing around, that means that they're crowded out from other parts of town and they're looking for fresh territory. So that means we're seeing the change in the number of homeless and the destitution of the homeless and the way they behave on that side of town. The change between what it once was and what it is now is vastly different. Even though the overwhelming number of homeless are not on that side of town, they're down on this side of town. The fact that you've had that big change tells you what's going on in San Francisco in general. So, in any event, he's talking about there's a crazy drunk homeless guy who panhandles in front of a Walgreens. By the way, Walgreens and CVS's are closing literally in droves. We've had, I think, 18 closures because California, in its wisdom, passed a law that says that it's a misdemeanor to steal anything under $950. So what's happening is people are going into Walgreens and CVS's with calculators, and they're adding up all the stuff that they've got. And when they get to that threshold, that $950 threshold, they stop what they're doing and they just run out of the store with all this stuff. And, if that happens multiple times a day, sooner or later, the loss buildup is going to be too much for even the biggest companies. They look at each of these stores based on their individual profitability. And they say, hey, look, it's not worth it for us to be here. So we've had 18 closures. Now, you say, all right, well, it's a big city and there are probably a lot of pharmacies out there, and that's true. But, if you're an elderly person who relies on getting prescription drugs from your neighborhood pharmacy, it's a devastating thing to lose your pharmacy. So, we've got this situation where the state is basically laid out the welcome mat for people to go steal and to drive pharmacies out of business, hurting the elderly and the people who need pharmacies in their neighborhoods. Okay, fine. So anyway, we've got this homeless guy out on the west side of town. This father has called the police a number of times. The guy exposes himself. He urinates and defecates on the sidewalk. I don't even want to describe what he did there, but he went to the bathroom. It was an unpleasant experience, went then went into a fast food place. This guy's tired of it. His children live there. He wants all of this out, and then he's also attacking the liberal orthodoxy that says that this is okay, that it's all right, that if you just give them more services, they'll get out of it. Okay, fine. So go to the response. Okay. So is this being posted in the picture-in-picture?
On full screen.
Oh, it's on the full screen. Okay, good. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. So then he says. So then the city responds, and it says that it tells about their challenges, and then this supervisor's aide, the Marxist supervisor's aide. Response telling the guy to call 311, which is like the city information line where you can report these kinds of things. By the way, this father has done this a number of times. So fast forward to his response. So now the father's had it up to here. And he's like, look, maybe I didn't make myself clear. These are people who are not able to take care of themselves. And then he talked about other cities that don't have this problem. And he said, I don't want home outreach. I've watched these outreach people come out and talk to this guy. He tells him to leave him alone. The guy's clearly got some sort of means because he's got a brand new San Francisco Giants hat on. I can't read that. So, yeah. Nothing is happening. This father is furious about it. Okay, so then this guy forwarded this email thread to me, and I said, listen, we're looking that we think that this district is really actually vulnerable, that we could put, if not a Republican, certainly a more conservative supervisor in that district. And I said, would you be willing to run? And then we have another conversation. So we're going to transition now. We have this one conversation where this guy describes this completely untenable, disgusting condition that he's dealing with in a neighborhood that's never seen anything like this in San Francisco, right? So then we have this conversation. I say, listen, I need a candidate to run in that district. We have we have an election next year to challenge this Marxist supervisor. Come, you go out and run, and then we transition to the next conversation. And I got to be honest with you folks, just bear with me a second, because I don't know which conversation is more disturbing. The fact that this homeless guy is defecating and using the sidewalks as toilets and jeopardizing this kid's health and this guy's kid's health and safety, or this next conversation. So please put up the next one, Mario, where he says why he can't run. Okay, I say to him, will you run? Okay, go on, da-da-da. So he says, it sounds nice. I don't see how it could be viable for me to run personally. I can help work with someone better positioned, pull it off perhaps. I can't afford to not work for a year to organize a campaign. Okay, blah, 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 but here we go. I'm likely to be canceled from a large part of the tech industry if I'm outed as a Republican. I've seen it happen, he says. Which if I lose would leave me unemployed, unemployable, and ostracized from my industry in the most expensive city in the world. I've got a family support. Okay, move on. Next, so then I respond to him, and I'm saying, is it, da-da-da, I talk about my thing. Okay, then move on to the next one. And so then he says, this is the killer. Listen to this, guys, because I think this might be worse than the homeless guy, defecating on the sidewalk in front of the Walgreens. Many tech organizations and venture capitalists informally circulate shared spreadsheets among themselves with the names of all the quote-unquote toxic people they want to cancel, meaning everyone in the network adds the names of people they dislike, and everyone refuses to hire anyone whose name is on the list. Some people are put on the list because they're actually abusers, predators, embezzlers, blah, 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 okay? But often they are put on the list simply because they made the mistake of loudly expressing conservative political views. Even outside the workplace, that doesn't fly in the SF tech industry. Liberal views are mandatory. It becomes much more difficult to get a job once your name winds up on a cancel list. Since they don't officially exist, there's no way to get off of one or even be aware that you're on one. Okay, Okay, so let's take that down. I don't want to expose this guy in any way. Let's pull it off. Okay, so listen. We know this is the truth, right? We've known this to be the case. And this is one of many examples that I get. But today it just struck me as talking about this guy's had it up to here with the homeless people in his neighborhood. I've had it up to here with Republicans being discriminated against. We have politicians, Chesa Bowden, and Dean Preston, local politician. Chesa Bowden is the Soros-backed San Francisco district attorney, who says that the recall of his position, recalling him, is delivered by Republicans, effectively otherizing Republicans. What if he said, pick another minority? What if he said, oh, by the way, it's not true, incidentally. It's Democrats who are leading the charge to recall him. But what if he said that about someone else, some other minority, that this X minority are the ones who are leading against us, leading the recall effort? I mean, he's supposed to represent the interests of everybody in this city, protect all of our rights, irrespective of our political point of views, the color of our skin, our religious affiliation, our gender, sexual identity, sexual preferences. None of that's supposed to matter. But meanwhile, he just finds it okay to target and demonize and otherize Republicans in San Francisco, even though he's an elected official and supposed to defend our rights. Okay, fine. So that's that. And, you can say that these companies can choose to not employ anybody they want. By the way, I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly content. As my libertarian points of view, sure, you have consensual, voluntary relationships. If you don't want to hire people based on their political point of view, okay, fine. But be consistent. You can't have non-discrimination laws for one type of minority based on one attribute and then have discriminatory laws for others. It's got to be one or the other. So in other words, if it's illegal to discriminate against people because they're gay or because they're a different race or because of their religion or any other reason, then you cannot discriminate against them because of their political viewpoints. And if we just say, wipe off all the anti-discrimination laws off the books. But based on, and I'm going to talk to some lawyers today, I've got to, based on what we're seeing, if there is in fact a blacklist, which I'm sure there is, and I'll give you some reasons why I know it exists. If there should be a Department of Justice investigation into these all too powerful companies in tech. By the way, if you don't live in the Bay Area and you don't realize this, the tech companies are virtually omnipotent. They are so powerful. They run the whole economy is driven by the tech business. Huge job creators. Careers start here. Opportunities grow here. The capital of the country runs from Wall Street into the pockets, into the coffers of Bay Area tech companies, and into the pockets of their investors and shareholders. And so they're incredibly powerful. They are the reason why San Francisco and the Bay Area in particular, and the Bay Area in general, is so expensive. And we have them discriminating against people with whom they don't agree politically. I don't know. It seems like, given the laws that are on our books today, that ought to be a cause for a Department of Justice investigation. If I were saying the same thing against, forget minorities, what if I were saying that about liberals? How would the mainstream media respond to that? Liberals aren't allowed to work in certain companies. They don't have the right political point of view. What would the mainstream media say about that? This is unbelievable. And just so you know, it was kind of an anomaly, but for many, many years, the city of San Francisco had the biggest young Republican organization and the most robust young Republican organization in the state. And I think it was because people wanted to get together in an environment that was sort of, not where they were the minority. They came from, they come from different areas around the country that are more conservative, and they got to meet other conservative people. That young Republican club is virtually dead. And I used to but used to think, we just didn't get good leadership, and that's the reason why. But now I know differently. Yeah, we might have had some people who could have done a better job, but I'm not going to fault them for it, because now I think the reason is why we don't have a robust young Republican club in the city of San Francisco is because people are afraid to come out as Republican, get seen at one of these events, and lose their job, or get on one of these lists that this guy mentioned in his email, and their careers are ruined. And so as a result, what you see is there's a group that I've referenced before that actually, a conservative group that actually meets in private locations, in lofts in different parts of the city, private rented venues, homes. And there are conservatives who meet in private to get camaraderie and to have connection with other people with like points of view. But they can't do it publicly. They can't go to, like this, the young Republicans used to go to local bars and groups and that sort of thing, and venues that would accept them. They can't do that anymore because their careers are in jeopardy. Think about that. Think about if that was your career. If you came out with, had certain political points of view, and then you couldn't continue your career. Now, I say in this email that I pulled off that I can do because I'm sort of independent. I do my own thing, and I've got a kind of a different kind of career, and I do just different business. So it's hard for them to impact me. But I think it's disgraceful. I think it's despicable for if you're running a company and you're allowing this to go on, you should be ashamed of yourself. You have no courage whatsoever. Life isn't all about just, dying with the most toys. How about standing for something? This is a disgrace what you're doing if you're running a company and allowing people to be discriminated against because they have different political points of view. Because the babies who are also in your company can't stand that they work with someone with whom they disagree. And you're going to allow that to happen? This is your future, folks. If you don't stand up to these people, this is your future. This woke thing, this liberal progressive onslaught it's a virus. It's the biggest pandemic that we're facing right now. Forget COVID. It is the pandemic that we are facing. And if we don't address it, then a pandemic is going to take over the whole country, and you won't have the opportunity to push back at that point. So you better do it now. These people are bigots, and they need to be called out for it, and we've got to address it. And I'm going to talk to the state party about addressing it in California because it's something that really needs to be dealt with, and it is the most pressing issue facing us today. Is this whole woke virus? This isn't the old days. This isn't cordial, if not ferocious, frequently. Ferocious but cordial and respectful, and on a base level, respectful political disagreement. This is voiding people for not being part of the cult. Didn't work out in Salem, Massachusetts. It hasn't worked out anywhere else. Ain't going to work out here. Push back now, or you're in big, big trouble. All right. I got to tell you, I'm kind of shaken by this. There's something about this email. I've seen it before in these threads. It's been on my mind for a while. I've been meaning to talk to a certain person in California Republican politics about this, about taking this on as an initiative. And I'm not letting it go this time. We have got to address this issue. And by the way, again, the way California goes is the way the rest of the country goes. So if we don't address it here, it could spread across the country, and it will be painful for everyone. So there you go. All right, I have some other quick notes here, but I got to tell you, I'm really worked up about this. I've mentioned a couple of other things. I want to congratulate Texas on 0 deaths, despite the fact that Joe Biden called them Neanderthals for deciding to go without masks. Gavin Newsom called it outrageously irresponsible or something like that. And that jackass looks like a bigger fool every day. 0 deaths in Texas. So congratulations to Texas. And if you're a Californian leaving the high tax state of California and running from the disaster that's been created here by the Democrats, and you move to Texas, and I'm thinking of Joe Rogan, but I'm sure there are a lot of other people like that. Joe Rogan, who supported Bernie Sanders. If you go to Texas and vote with the idiots who just drove you from California, there's a special place in hell set up for you. You're a moron if you do that. So there's that. Anyway, so there's that. Oh, let me move to something positive. Oh, here's such a big thing. I noticed over the weekend or last week that real John Dennis was banned from TikTok. I didn't even know I hadn't touched the platform. It's funny. I just went through my email thread and we went through the verification codes. Mara, get this. We put it in April of 20. Those were the last emails that I got from them. So we went to log back in. I hadn't posted anything there in forever and came to find out that I was permanently banned. I don't even think we had many posts in there, if anything, and it wasn't certainly nothing. This is the sort of stuff that I talk about, and I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but we got permanently banned for TikTok, so there's that. I know I've been moderately critical, rarely, but moderately critical of a certain country. And maybe that had something to do with it, but we're going to send a note over to them and see what they say, because it doesn't make any sense. But we'll see. Not the end of the world. We'll move on. But sort of tied into what I was just saying. Always interesting when the tech business falls in line or has the same policies as this certain country whose name I shall not say. On a positive note, I just booked my tickets to be in Orlando at the end of next month for the Republican Liberty Caucus convention. If you happen to be in that area and would like to join us, go to rlc.org, rlc.org. It's going to be a great convention. We've got some great people there. Byron Donalds, the newly elected congressman from Florida, is going to be there. We will have Anthony Sabatini, who's a up and coming star on the Republican Party, who's a state legislator in Florida, is going to be there. We're going to get a video message from Rand Paul. I just spoke to him last week, and he committed, and I'm so grateful. Thomas Massey, the congressman from Kentucky, another rising star in the GOP, is going to be joining us live. He's going to be there. He's going to be our featured speaker on Saturday night, and he's actually going to come in a little early, and we're going to be able to mix it up with him. So that's going to be great. So if you can, rlc.org. I'll be down there. I'm also going to play golf with someone. If anybody's interested in doing that, nice course. If you can't want to come in, it's going to be kind of a lottery thing. So feel free to reach out to us if you're going to be in the area. Buy a ticket. Send me a note at info@johndennis.com, and let's see if we can't connect. Looking forward to it. Taking my daughter down. I think she's going to have a great time. We're going to spend a little bit of time in Florida. And I just want to say this. I mean, I'm animated, obviously, today by both of those things that came out of that email thread. One, that the west side of the city is getting inundated, and the city is just saying, we don't care. The supervisor is basically like, whatever. So that's bad enough. But this whole thing about the tech business discriminating against Republicans, what this guy says, he's a reasonable guy, and he won't run for office and put his name out there because he's afraid his career is going to get quashed. And that is not acceptable. It really isn't acceptable behavior. So I'm really caught up in this. There are a lot of other things going on with woke culture, and I think it feels to me like this whole situation within the country is going to come to a head here soon. I'm positive. I'm very positive about it. I think we will, reasonable people will stand up and say that this business with the woke folks is not acceptable, and we're going to push back. But things are coming to a head. This can't continue in this direction. We can't have, the insanity of the woke crowd canceling us, canceling reasonable people. We can't have a country that where you can't have a reasonable disagreement with someone and leave it at that, where people have to cancel you if they don't agree with you. I'm sorry, you just can't have a country that's based on that. You can't have a country that, where you rig the game so much so that the cities on the coasts dominate the interior of the country. You literally cannot have a country, because there's no way people in Iowa, no way people in South Dakota, no way people in Oklahoma are going to put up with people from New York and Los Angeles and DC and San Francisco telling them how to live. It's just not going to happen. So this is coming to a head, and that's why we need to stay engaged, and we need to keep pointing out where the fights are, and directing the fights and being in the thick of the fights. Of course, all metaphorical fights, all political, and of course nonviolent always. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please follow us at Real John Dennis on Twitter and on Instagram. And if you want to follow us on Facebook or YouTube, we really want you to punch the subscriber button. It's John Dennis Report on YouTube. Thank you again. Always grateful to have you here with us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. 2 p.m. on the West Coast, 5 p.m. on the East. See you then.